Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Atlanta, stop what you are doing right now because Ian Cunningham is out here making moves again, and this one has people talking. The Atlanta Falcons have just acquired offensive tackle Wanya Morris from the Kansas City Chiefs in a trade, and depending on who you ask, this deal is either a quiet stroke of genius or a massive question mark wrapped in a Falcons uniform. Now, before you fire up the comments section and start typing in all caps, let me tell you this. The full story on Wanya Morris is a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting than the initial reaction might suggest. And by the time we are done today, you are going to understand exactly why this trade could end up being one of the most important depth moves this franchise has made in years. Let us get into it. First, the trade details, because you deserve to know exactly what changed hands here. The Atlanta Falcons are sending a 6th-round pick to Kansas City and getting back a 7th-round pick plus Wanya Morris. Now, when you break that down to its simplest terms, what the Falcons essentially did was swap a 6th for a 7th and came away with an actual human being who has NFL starting experience in the process. That is it. That is the whole transaction. No first-round picks flying out the door. No blue-chip prospects being sacrificed on the altar of a depth acquisition. Ian Cunningham, the man running this front office, once again demonstrated the philosophy that has quietly defined his entire tenure in Atlanta. He is obsessed with value. Completely, unrelentingly obsessed with it. You saw it throughout free agency. You saw it in the Sidney Brown trade. And you are seeing it again right here with Wanya Morris. Cunningham is not the general manager who is going to mortgage the future chasing a flashy name. He is the general manager who finds the undervalued piece, brings it to Flowery Branch, lets the coaching staff work their magic, and then watches as everyone who laughed at the transaction is suddenly forced to eat their words. Whether that happens with Morris remains to be seen, but the approach is consistent and it is intentional. Now let us talk about the man himself, because Wanya Morris deserves a full and honest introduction to Falcons Nation. Morris was selected in the 3rd round of the 2023 NFL Draft, which means somebody, a room full of professional football evaluators, looked at this offensive lineman and said he is worth spending a genuine draft asset on. He is 6'5" and 307 pounds. He is just 26 years old, which means he is firmly in the prime years of what should be his developmental window as an NFL player. And oh, by the way, he has a Super Bowl ring. That is right. Wanya Morris is a champion. He was in Kansas City when that franchise was doing what Kansas City does, which is winning football games and collecting Lombardi trophies. So whatever else you want to say about this man's current situation, you cannot say he has not been around winning football and winning culture at the highest level the sport has to offer. In 2024, Morris showed genuine promise, starting 11 games for those Chiefs. 11 starts as a young offensive tackle in the NFL for a franchise that operates at championship caliber. That is not nothing. That is a player getting real opportunities on a real stage and holding his own well enough to keep getting those opportunities. But then 2025 rolled around and things got considerably quieter for Morris. Of his 12 appearances last year, only 1 came as an actual start. He logged just 66 snaps on the season. 66. For a player with starting experience and a 3rd-round pedigree, that is a significant step backward, and it raises the obvious question that every Falcons fan is going to be asking: what happened? The honest answer is that Wanya Morris struggled, particularly in pass protection, and the NFL is not a league that gives extended grace periods when your deficiencies show up on film. According to Pro Football Focus, Morris posted a pass-blocking grade of 23.7 last season. Now I need you to understand the full weight of that number before we move on. That was not one of the worst grades among all tackles in the league. That was the worst grade. Dead last. Out of every offensive tackle in the entire NFL, Wanya Morris ranked at the absolute bottom of the pass protection rankings. That is a brutally honest assessment, and there is simply no way to spin it into something positive. The pass blocking was bad. Full stop. However, and this is where the story gets genuinely interesting, his run blocking grade told a completely different story. Morris graded out at 83.2 in run blocking, which is a legitimately excellent number by any measure. When those two grades are combined, you get an overall score of 57.1, which lands him squarely in average territory. But that split, the massive gap between his run-blocking excellence and his pass protection struggles, tells you something important about what kind of player Wanya Morris actually is and what kind of player he could potentially become with the right coaching. And that brings us to the part of this story that should genuinely excite Atlanta Falcons fans, because this is where everything starts to make sense. Bill Callahan. If you know anything about the history of offensive line coaching in the National Football League, you know that Bill Callahan is not just a good coach, he is widely considered to be the single best offensive line coach in the entire sport. The man has spent decades developing offensive linemen, transforming raw and rough prospects into polished professionals, taking castoffs and reclamation projects and turning them into contributors. When the Falcons brought Callahan into this building, they did not just add a position coach. They added a developmental weapon. And when you look at Wanya Morris through that lens, a 26-year-old with elite run-blocking skills, a horrific pass-blocking grade, and a high athletic ceiling that his draft position suggests is still largely untapped, what you are actually looking at is exactly the kind of project that Bill Callahan was put on this earth to fix. The man is probably sitting in his office right now looking at Morris's film, seeing all the technical flaws in his pass set, identifying the footwork breakdowns and the hand-fighting deficiencies and the weight distribution issues that led to those 62 career pressures allowed and 9 sacks surrendered, and he is absolutely salivating at the opportunity. Because Callahan has seen worse. Callahan has taken worse and made them better. And if anybody in that building can unlock the player that the Chiefs scouts believed they were drafting in the 3rd round of 2023, it is the man they call the best offensive line coach in football. Now let us set the competitive landscape for Morris, because he is not walking into Atlanta as a starter. He is walking in as a competitor, which is exactly what this offensive line room needs. He will be going up against Jawaan Taylor, Michael Jarrell, Storm Norton, and anyone else the Falcons have in that tackle rotation for the starting right tackle job. And look, right now that position is Jawaan Taylor's to lose. Taylor came over from Kansas City in free agency. Interesting that it keeps coming back to Kansas City, is it not? And he is the presumptive favorite to line up on the right side when the regular season kicks off. But competition makes everyone better. The presence of Morris in that room, hungry to prove himself after a rough 2025, is only going to push Taylor to be sharper, more prepared, and more locked in. That is how functional NFL roster building works at its best. And Cunningham clearly understands that dynamic. But here is the layer of this story that goes beyond the immediate competition for a starting job, and this is the part that actually matters most when you zoom all the way out and look at the big picture. Jake Matthews. The name that every Falcons fan knows. The name that has been synonymous with the left tackle position in Atlanta for what feels like an eternity, because it essentially has been. Jake Matthews has taken more offensive snaps than any other player in the NFL since entering the league. Let that land for a moment. More than anyone else. The only player in the entire sport with more consecutive starts is Bobby Wagner, a linebacker, at 11,940 starts to Matthews' 11,712. Matthews' consecutive starting streak sits at 194 games, which is the longest active streak in the National Football League, and it is not particularly close. What Jake Matthews has done in terms of durability and consistency is one of the most underappreciated achievements in this franchise's history, and the man deserves every bit of recognition he gets for it. But here is the reality that nobody in Atlanta wants to say out loud, even though everybody is thinking it. Father Time is undefeated. He has never lost. Not once. Not to Jake Matthews, not to Bobby Wagner, not to anyone who has ever strapped on a helmet and played this sport. At some point, nobody knows when, nobody is wishing it on Matthews or putting bad energy into the universe, but at some point, The Falcons are going to need to have a plan at the offensive tackle position that does not have Jake Matthews' name on it. And getting Wanya Morris into the building now, getting him into Bill Callahan's system now, letting him develop and learn and grow in a winning environment now, that is forward thinking. That is an organization that is not just worried about winning the next game, but building something sustainable over time. If Morris develops into a legitimate right tackle starter over the next year or two, while learning behind one of the most durable left tackles in league history, and then is positioned to step into an even more prominent role when the time inevitably comes. That is textbook succession planning, and it costs the Falcons essentially nothing to pursue it. So how do we grade this trade in its entirety? The honest answer, if we are being intellectually responsible about it, is that a definitive grade is impossible to assign right now. The outcome of this deal lives entirely in the future. In practices and preseason games and regular season snaps and everything else that comes between today and whenever Wanya Morris either justifies or fails to justify the faith Atlanta is placing in him. What we can say with certainty is that the cost was minimal, essentially a pick swap, and the potential upside is real. A 26-year-old third-round pick with elite run-blocking ability, a Super Bowl pedigree, and the best offensive line coach in football tasked with fixing his pass protection, that is a bet worth making at a 6th-round price tag. If Morris develops and contributes, Cunningham looks like a genius, and Callahan looks like the magician he has always been. If Morris never figures it out, the Falcons are out essentially nothing and move on. The risk-reward calculus here is as favorable as it gets for a depth acquisition. Atlanta, this is what smart, process-driven roster building looks like in the modern NFL. It is not always glamorous. It does not always generate the kind of social media explosion that a blockbuster free agent signing does. But it is methodical, it is disciplined, and over time it is exactly the kind of thinking that separates organizations that consistently compete from the ones that are perpetually rebuilding. Ian Cunningham is building something in this city, Bill Callahan is going to coach it up, and Wanya Morris might just be the next reclamation project that makes everybody who doubted this front office look very, very foolish. Rise up, Atlanta. The moves are coming fast, and your job is to stay locked in. If this breakdown gave you everything you needed on the Wanya Morris trade, do me a favor and smash that like button right now, because it tells the algorithm that Falcons Focus is the place to be for every single move this organization makes. Drop your grade on this trade in the comments. Do you trust Cunningham and Callahan to make this work? Or are you skeptical? I genuinely want to hear from you. And if you are not subscribed to Falcons Focus yet, hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single video. We cover every move, every angle, every story that matters to this fan base. Until next time, Atlanta, rise up.
Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.